My name is Clare Price, 32 years old. When the company called it a restructuring, I knew that was corporate code for scapegoating. The project had been doomed by decisions above my pay grade, but I was the one who signed the last presentation. Someone had to fall, and I was convenient. I left the marketing firm that afternoon carrying a cardboard box of desk plants and stale protein bars, my ID badge still swinging from my wrist like a broken cuff. The city felt unnaturally bright, the kind of brightness that exposes rather than warms. I called my mother before I even got home. She didn't ask if I was okay. She asked, "Did you at least get a severance?" When I said yes, she exhaled like that was all that mattered. Then she added, "Well, maybe this will humble you. Call David and apologize. He'd still take you back if you stopped acting superior." David, my ex. The one who wanted me to quit working and focus on the home life. I'm not calling him Mom. You need stability. You don't have a job now. I have savings. You can't live on pride, Claire. By the time we hung up, I felt smaller than I had leaving the office. Within the hour, Madison called, my sister, the family's self-appointed success story. "Dad's company is hiring," she said, brisk and triumphant. "It's entry level, but better than nothing. I've got 8 years of experience. I'm not starting over at the bottom." Beggars can't be choosers, Elle. I bit down the word that came to mind. I'm not begging. Jacob's call came next. "Maybe this is a sign to rethink your goals. You've always chased impossible things. Maybe it's time to focus on a family instead of fantasy." He said it in that calm tone people use before saying something cruel. The next few weeks were an exercise in humiliation. Every Sunday dinner, my family offered little parables about thrift. Madison lecturing on coupons, Mom suggesting I water down my dish soap, Dad musing that walking everywhere builds character. At one dinner, they left an empty chair on either side of me, as though failure were catching. I didn't argue. I sat there nodding, tasting bitterness under every bite. What kept me sane was my Friday ritual. $10 of lottery tickets from the corner store. The clerk, a middle-aged man named Ravi, always grinned when he handed them over. "This is your week, Ms. Price. I can feel it." I'd laugh, slip them into my purse, and forget about them until morning. One Saturday, I woke to pale December light and the stale taste of last night's wine. The tickets were still on the counter. I matched the numbers on my phone screen once, twice, 3 times. All 6 aligned. I stared until the digits blurred. I'd won $120 million. I sat perfectly still for nearly 20 minutes. The hum of the refrigerator, the only sound in the world. After taxes, it would be about 70 million. My first instinct was to call my mother, to hear her gasp, to tell her everything. My finger hovered over her name. Then I remembered her voice calling me contagious, Madison's clipped tone, Jacob's pity. I put the phone down. That night, I met with a financial consultant named Richard Hale, a quiet man with deliberate hands and silver hair that made him look carved from patience itself. "Congratulations," he said, sliding a folder toward me. "Now let's make sure this doesn't ruin your life." "Ruin?" I asked. "Money doesn't change people," he said. "It amplifies what's already there. If they love you, it'll show. If they don't, you'll know fast." I thought of my mother's text messages, advice disguised as affection. "I'll wait until Christmas," I said. "Make it a surprise." He nodded, but the look in his eyes said he'd seen this story before. The next week, I started rehearsing what I'd say. I wanted to give you something special this Christmas. In my mind, they cried, hugged me, apologized for the dinners and the distance. I almost believed it. Then, 1 week before Christmas, my phone rang. "Claire," Mom said, her tone clipped, "we've decided it might be best if you didn't come this year." "What?" "You've been so negative lately, and we want to protect the holiday atmosphere. Your failure is contagious, darling. We can't have that energy around the children." I thought she was joking. She wasn't. "It's nothing personal," she added. "We just need a joyful Christmas." She hung up. For a full minute, I stood in my apartment with the phone against my ear, listening to the silence she left behind. Then I texted Jacob, "Did you know Mom uninvited me?" He replied, "Yeah, we all agreed. Sorry, Elle. We just need a positive vibe this year." Madison's message followed. "Maybe use the time to figure things out. Love you, though." I should have cried. Instead, I laughed. Soft at first, then uncontrollable. I laughed until tears came because I'd almost told them. I'd almost shared my 70 million with people who thought I was too pathetic for Christmas dinner. The next morning, I walked into a car dealership and pointed to a slate gray convertible. That one, I said. 60,000, paid in cash. When the salesman handed me the keys, his grin mirrored my own disbelief. Driving off the lot, I felt weightless for the first time in months. Madison called that evening. Mom said you bought a car. How much did you waste? I had the means, I said carefully. You spent your last savings, didn't you? Elle, that's idiotic. When your landlord kicks you out, I hope that car's comfy. I hung up mid-sentence. On Christmas Eve, I refused to stay home sulking. I booked a table at the most expensive country club in the city. The room glowed with gold light, a fire crackling in the stone hearth. I ordered lobster, filet mignon, a bottle of red I couldn't pronounce. Couples laughed around me. I ate alone and felt rich in every sense that mattered. The bill came to $320. I tipped generously. Walking back to my car through the snow, I felt something unexpected. Peace. Not triumph, not revenge, just the quiet relief of finally stepping outside the role they'd written for me. In the following weeks, I met with Richard again. He explained trusts, investments, offshore accounts. I signed paper until my signature felt like a performance. You've set up everything securely, he said. The next challenge is personal. What will you tell your family? Nothing, I said. Not yet. Then be ready. Secrets this big have gravity. By March, the snow melted. The days stretched longer, filled with possibility. I met a realtor named Robert Lang who specialized in high-end properties. No budget limit, I told him. He blinked once, professional mask slipping just enough to reveal curiosity. We toured mansions with fountains and chandeliers, glass boxes overlooking the city, colonial estates lined with magnolias. Then I saw it, a modern stone house with blue shutters, 5 bedrooms, 4 baths, and a pool shimmering like liquid sky. Price tag, $2.5 million. I'll take it, I said. Robert laughed, then stopped when I transferred the funds. You just paid the full amount. Yes, I said. I don't like debts. That night, sitting alone in my empty new living room, I felt the echo of footsteps that weren't there, the ghost of a family who still thought I was a failure. I smiled at the thought of their faces when they eventually found out. Not because I wanted to gloat, but because maybe, just maybe, they'd finally understand the difference between failure and freedom. I poured myself a glass of wine, stared out at the pool, catching the last blush of sunset, and whispered to the reflection, "Merry Christmas to me." The house smelled like new paint and possibility. Movers left boot prints on protective paper, their footsteps thudding up the stairs with boxes labeled. In a tidy hand that didn't feel like mine yet, I trailed behind them with a roll of blue tape, sticking notes on walls, sofa here, art there, as if order could be summoned with adhesive. In the kitchen, afternoon light turned the marble island into a small glacier. I touched it and felt the chill climb my fingers. A bracing reminder. This is real. Robert stopped by with a leather folder and an almost boyish grin. All filed, he said, tapping the deed. Welcome home. Thank you, I said and meant it. He lingered by the window that overlooked the pool. You picked well. The neighborhood is private, discreet. That matters to me, I said. He nodded like he knew why and didn't need me to say it. For the first 2 nights, I slept on a mattress on the floor of the primary bedroom, the high ceiling pressing a calm weight over me. At dawn, I padded barefoot to the glass doors, slid them open, and let the cold seep around my ankles. The pool's surface shivered in a thin breeze. Somewhere in the distance, a gardener's blower coughed to life and then died. In that hush, I made a small promise to myself. I would not let money turn me into someone I couldn't recognize. I would build something. I would be precise with my yes, uncompromising with my no. On the 3rd day, the doorbell rang. Through the sidelight, I saw Madison on the porch, hair perfect, coat expensive, mouth already pinched into a question mark. Her eyes flicked past me into the foyer as soon as I opened the door. You moved, she said, like an accusation. I did. She stepped inside without being asked, pivoting slowly to take in the staircase, the chandelier, the art still leaning against the wall. How? She tried for a laugh and failed. Did you... She looked at my face, recalibrated. Who helped you? I was so tired of that assumption, the invisible man behind any woman's accomplishment. I helped me, I said. Madison walked into the living room, fingertips brushing the back of the new sofa, the way you touch something you're deciding whether to buy. This neighborhood, she said, almost to herself. This is significant. Tea, I offered, because habit is hard to kill. She ignored the question and turned to me, eyes sharp. How much was it? Enough, I said. Her jaw tightened, and a thin line of color rose to her cheekbones. You're not being cute, Elle. This is serious. People don't just pop into houses like this. She looked at the ceiling as if facts lived up there. I can find out. Can you? I kept my voice level and watched her choose between a bluff and a confession. My husband has access, she said lightly, then lighter still, to, databases. Nothing improper, obviously. But if he wanted to be thorough, he could help locate things. So there it was, the soft threat dressed as family concern. I felt a cool spot settle in my chest. Why would you need to locate anything I don't invite you to? Her mouth quivered around a retort that never came. I took out my phone and opened the photo I'd been saving for exactly this moment. The lottery ticket with all 6 numbers glowing like small suns. I let her hold the screen. Her eyes moved once, twice, then stopped moving at all. You're lying, she said, but the words came out paper thin. I'm not. She didn't say congratulations. She didn't even breathe for a beat. Then she handed the phone back, turned, and walked out without a word, heels clicking a staccato that felt like punctuation. The door closed with a whisper. The quiet that followed was not peace. It was a fuse burning. The calls started within the hour. I didn't pick up. By evening, my mother had called 5 times. On the 5th, I answered. Where are you? She said, skipping hello entirely. I'm fine, Mom. You moved, she said. You didn't tell us. That's not how family behaves. Family also doesn't uninvite you from Christmas, I said. Silence snapped between us. Madison said you showed her she swallowed, ticket. I did. We need to discuss this as a family, she said, finding her footing on a familiar stage. Your father wants a meeting. It's best to coordinate support so you don't do anything rash. Rash, I said. Sunday, 2:00, she said, and gave me an address I already knew by heart. I let the quiet stretch until she added, or we can come to you, if that's more comfortable. My house, I said, because I wanted them to see it, not to gloat, to look reality in the face. On Sunday, they arrived nearly on time, ringed in urgency. My father paced the porch before I opened the door, then clasped my shoulders like a politician. Look at you, he said, as if I'd simply gotten a good haircut. Madison and her husband stood together, rigid as a photograph. Jacob held a folder, which made me want to laugh and did not. We sat in the living room. The expensive furniture suddenly felt like a witness. I won in December, I said. 120 million, about 70 after taxes. Silence. Then a chorus of practicalities, like a water main bursting. College funds, Jacob said, his folder already opening. The twins, tuition's astronomical. If we set aside... Mortgage, Madison said crisply. Ours carries a punitive rate since the refinance. A lump sum would be logical. We have always supported you, Mom said, reaching for my hand, letting it hover theatrically when I didn't offer mine. Family is a net. We're all in this together. Dad cleared his throat, eyes shiny with a performance of pride. This is a chance to create legacy, he said. We guide this wisely. We all rise. That's leadership, Claire. No one asked how I was. No one asked if I was scared or excited or sleeping. I'll think about it, I said, and watch the words land like a bad check. But for now, I'd like you to go. Madison's chin jerked. Jacob's mouth opened and closed. Mom blinked fast. Dad set his jaw. They stood, stunned by the absence of an immediate yes, and shuffled out, their reflection stretching thin in the glass, like ghosts leaving. As the door clicked shut, my phone buzzed with the family group chat lighting up. Proud of you from Dad. We adore you from Mom with a string of heart emojis, the digital equivalent of a bouquet left on a porch. I stared at the screen until the words blurred into shapes. Then I typed, I'm thinking of giving it all to charity. 30 seconds later, my phone rang. Video, I answered. Dad's face filled the screen, flushed. Absolutely not, he said. That would be... What are you thinking? You're not qualified to. Mom's face shoved his aside. Sweetheart, she said, with the softness she reserves for manipulation. You're emotional. It's too much responsibility. We can take some of the burden. You shouldn't have to carry this alone. Jacob's voice floated from somewhere off camera. She needs an evaluation, he said. If she's not in her right mind, the court can protect the assets. The court. Protect. Assets. The words stacked like bricks around my throat. I'm in my right mind, I said, and ended the call. I blocked the numbers. Then I turned off the lights and sat in the dark, listening to the house settle around me, wood ticking softly as it exhaled heat. I should have been shaking. I wasn't. I felt finished, like a sentence that had finally found its period. They didn't stop. The next day, my parents arrived at the gate and pressed the bell until the chime fused into a nerve. I watched from the upstairs window, Mom dabbing at her eyes, Dad pacing, both of them performing as if for an unseen jury. I didn't open the door. The day after, Jacob came with his wife. He knocked until his knuckles must have gone hot, then cold. Then Madison and her husband, her hand flat against the glass, her mouth forming my name like a password. I did not move. That night, I called Richard. They'll escalate, he said gently. People do. What do I do? We document. You meet with a psychiatrist for a voluntary capacity evaluation. You ask your therapist for a letter. We make a folder. If they try for conservatorship, we respond with facts. Okay, I said. And we consider relocation, he added. A clean start is sometimes the only start. The word relocation unlocked a door in my mind I hadn't admitted was there. I imagined packing the house I had just arranged, leaving the pool I had just learned to read in the mornings, disappearing into a city where my last name meant nothing. The image hurt and relieved. I slept on it. In the morning, I woke before the sun, brewed coffee, and stood at the glass again. A thin sheet of mist hovered over the pool. In the quiet, I pictured my parents' faces at the gate, Jacob's folder, Madison's cold shock when she saw the ticket. I pictured the word evaluation, sliding from Jacob's mouth like oil. I pictured the young version of me who would have begged to be believed and loved. I whispered to her, "We're done begging." By noon, I had a plan. I called a realtor in Austin whose profile photo looked like he told the truth. "I'm ready to buy quickly," I said. "Cash." "We can do that," he replied, unsurprised. I contacted a different brokerage to list my current home and manage everything without me. I scheduled the movers for 2 weeks out at night. I met with the psychiatrist Richard recommended and answered patient, precise questions about sleep, appetite, impulse control, judgment. I left with a letter in a sealed envelope and a strange, buoyant feeling, like I had just passed a test I didn't know I'd been taking. The doorbell rang again that evening. I didn't go downstairs. Someone slid an envelope under the door. I waited until their footsteps receded and then picked it up with the tips of my fingers, as if it might burn. Inside was a photo of me and Madison at ages I barely remembered, gap-toothed and conspiratorial, arms flung around each other. On the back, in my mother's looping hand, "Remember when we took care of you?" I placed the photo on the counter and felt the tiniest tremor under my ribs. Then I exhaled, slow, and slid it into a drawer. I locked the drawer and laid the key beside it, unlocked. Some doors needed to stay shut, even when you knew exactly how to open them. 2 weeks later, the movers arrived after midnight. They worked in soft-soled shoes, voices low, like an orchestra tuning under a blanket. By dawn, the rooms were bones again. I stood in the foyer with my keys in my hand and looked up at the chandelier that had learned my breathing. "Thank you," I said without irony, and pulled the door closed behind me. I didn't look back as I drove away. Austin greeted me with open roads and open sky. The city felt lighter, unburdened by memory. I rented a small furnished place on the east side for the first month, anonymous and quiet, its walls still smelling of fresh paint and someone else's life. Every morning, I drank coffee on the balcony and watched the sunrise stretch over the skyline like a clean slate. It felt strange and beautiful to be untraceable. I used my new phone to call the one person I hadn't cut off, Aunt Lisa. Her voice cracked through the static, warm and familiar. "Claire, honey, I was hoping you'd call." I told her everything. The lottery, the house, the family meeting, the threats, the midnight move. I waited for judgment, but she only sighed. "You did the right thing," she said. "Your mother always believed love and control were the same thing. Don't let her drag you back." Can I trust you to keep my number private? You have my word. That night, I slept better than I had in years. Richard helped me set up the next phase, my foundation. We called it the E. Price Foundation for Renewal. Its mission simple: to help people who'd lost their jobs rebuild their lives. No headlines, no vanity, just quiet help. I leased an office downtown with exposed brick and wide windows, hired a small staff, and began reviewing applications myself. The first applicant was a single mother named Talia who'd been evicted after her husband disappeared with their savings. Her voice trembled as she told her story, but her eyes stayed steady. I approved her grant on the spot and watched her shoulders drop with relief. It was a feeling I hadn't realized I'd been craving: to give without expectation, to witness gratitude instead of greed. Word spread quickly. Within a month, the foundation had helped 24 families. Richard called it philanthropy with teeth. I called it purpose. For months, I lived simply: work, sleep, morning walks around the lake. My anonymity felt sacred, until one evening, at a charity gala meant to attract local donors, fate decided to rearrange the pieces again. The ballroom glittered with understated wealth: navy suits, champagne laughter, the hum of polite networking. I was talking with a retired professor about education grants when a man's voice joined the conversation. E. Price, he said, smiling. So that's the mystery woman I've been reading about. He was tall, dark-haired, with a gaze that held steady without prying. Michael Torres, he introduced himself. I run a tech firm a few miles out. I've been thinking about getting involved in community funding, and your foundation keeps coming up. Then you've been reading our press releases, I said lightly. I prefer field reports, he replied. I actually visited one of your partner shelters last week. The people there speak about you like you're a ghost that leaves food on the table. I laughed, genuinely. I try not to haunt anyone. We talked for an hour about funding, then philosophy, then music, then nothing at all. When the gala ended, he asked, "Dinner sometime? Not business, just dinner." I hesitated. Trust was a muscle I hadn't exercised in a long time, but something about him, his calm, the way he listened, made me say yes. Our first dinner was at a small Italian restaurant that smelled like basil and safety. We talked about work, travel, and childhood embarrassments. He never asked about my family, my money, or my past. He asked about what made me laugh. It startled me how quickly I remembered. Weeks turned into months. Dinners became weekends. Weekends became something steadier. He never tried to solve me. He simply stayed. One night, while we were cooking together, he burned the garlic and cursed softly. I laughed so hard I cried, and when I looked up, he was smiling at me like I was the first unsolved mystery that didn't scare him. 6 months after that gala, Michael proposed. No grand gestures, no witnesses, just the two of us on his balcony, the city lights shimmering like 1,000 quiet promises. "Claire," he said, slipping a ring into my palm, "you don't have to say yes tonight. Just know that I mean it." I said yes before he finished the sentence. Aunt Lisa was the first person I told. She cried, of course. "Honey, you found someone who sees you. I'm so proud." Then her tone shifted, cautious. "But be careful. Your family hasn't stopped asking questions." "What kind of questions?" "Your mother called me again. She's telling everyone you've gone off the rails. She even mentioned hiring a private investigator." "Does she know I'm in Austin?" "No, she just knows you're not in that house anymore." "Good." Lisa hesitated. "Jacob's kids might lose their scholarships next semester. I know they don't deserve your anger. Maybe I could help them anonymously," I finished. She didn't answer, but the silence was an agreement. That night, I sat at my desk drafting a grant proposal under the foundation's name: 2 anonymous scholarships for students from Jacob's district. I left the donor field blank, but my chest felt tight. Charity had boundaries. Family blurred them. If I helped them, they might feel my presence and come looking again. If I didn't, I'd carry the guilt like a stone. I saved the draft and turned off the screen. Michael came up behind me and wrapped his arms around my shoulders. "Long day?" "Just thinking about who deserves help." He kissed the top of my head. "Everyone does, in their own way. You just can't be the one to save them all." His words landed softly but stayed heavy. By spring, our wedding plans were set. A small ceremony, 20 guests, no drama. Aunt Lisa would fly in from Seattle. No one else from my past would know. Still, the shadows reached for me. Richard called one afternoon. "I got wind of something odd," he said. A lawyer up north requested your public financial filings. The name matches one of your mother's attorneys. Are they building a case? Hard to say. Maybe fishing. But it's wise to prepare. I'd like you to meet with a psychiatrist again. Voluntarily, just to update your file. It's the best shield if they try anything. So I did. The doctor asked how I was sleeping, how I handled stress, if I'd had any impulsive spending. I smiled, thinking of the $60,000 car I no longer owned. No, I said. I think I'm done spending to prove anything. He smiled back. Then you're ahead of most people. After the appointment, I walked through downtown Austin, past buskers and food trucks, feeling invisible in the best way. The anonymity that once felt lonely now felt like armor. At sunset, I returned to the office. The foundation was closing for the day, staff saying their goodbyes. I walked past the framed photos on the wall, families we'd helped, students holding acceptance letters, single mothers signing new leases, proof that something good had grown from the ashes. I paused at the window, the city lights flickering on one by one. For the first time, I didn't feel the need to look over my shoulder. Then my phone buzzed. A message from Aunt Lisa. They're still searching, honey, but they haven't found you. Be happy. Be free. I typed back, I already am. That night, I slipped into bed beside Michael. The hum of the ceiling fan and the warmth of his hand over mine became my new definition of safety. I closed my eyes and thought, not for the first time, that sometimes the most radical act of love is disappearing from the people who keep trying to rewrite your life. The morning of our wedding arrived like something from another life, quiet, golden, and free of expectation. The garden venue glowed under strings of soft white lights, dew still glistening on the grass. 20 guests gathered in rows, all faces I knew, all hearts I trusted. There were no photographers shouting directions, no relatives whispering judgments behind champagne glasses, just the sound of music drifting through air that felt lighter than it had in years. Aunt Lisa stood near the front, her hands folded, eyes already misting. She wore a lavender shawl that trembled when she laughed. When she hugged me before the ceremony, she whispered, "You made it, Claire. You really did." Michael waited under the arbor, looking both nervous and certain. When I reached him, I realized my heartbeat wasn't from fear. It was recognition. I was finally standing beside someone who didn't want to own me or save me. Just walk with me. The officiant's words blurred into background music. What I remember are the smaller things. Michael's thumb brushing against my palm, the way the sunlight hit the edge of his ring as he slid it onto my finger, the collective exhale when he said, "I do." When it was my turn, I looked at him and said, "I do too." Completely. Applause broke out like a sudden storm of joy. Aunt Lisa wiped her eyes, whispering "finally" under her breath. The reception was simple but alive. Small tables, laughter, the scent of rosemary and cake. We danced barefoot on the grass, our shoes forgotten somewhere near the buffet. Lisa gave a toast that quieted everyone. To Claire and Michael, she said, for choosing peace over approval and love over fear. May your life be the family you deserve. I felt tears gather, but didn't let them fall. I just squeezed Michael's hand. Later, when the guests had left and we sat outside under a canopy of stars, Michael looked at me. "Are you okay? About everything that isn't here tonight?" I knew what he meant. My family. "Yes," I said. "For the first time, I'm okay with the silence." He nodded slowly. "If you ever change your mind, I'll be here. I just want to make sure it's your decision." "It is," I said. They showed me who they are, and I finally listened. In the weeks that followed, life settled into something that felt almost ordinary. Morning coffee, work at the foundation, dinners at home. Peaceful days. But peace has a way of drawing shadows. One evening, Aunt Lisa called. "I think you should know. Your mother posted something on Facebook." "What now?" "She's telling people she forgives you, that she's ready to welcome you home when you're done being dramatic." I laughed softly. "Forgives me?" She also mentioned a new attorney, said she's considering getting justice for what you did to the family. I felt the old chill return, but only for a moment. "Let her talk," I said. "I'm done defending myself." "Good, but just in case, be ready." The next day, Richard arrived at my office with a folder. "Your mother's lawyer filed an inquiry for your public records. We've prepared a formal response. You're protected." He handed me documents. A notarized psychiatric evaluation confirming mental capacity, a therapist's letter about my emotional stability, copies of the trust and foundation bylaws. It was my life distilled into proof. "You're untouchable," he said. "Not untouchable," I corrected, "just untethered." That night, Michael and I sat on the porch watching the Texas sunset bleed into violet. I told him about the lawyer, about my mother's posts, about the strange peace that came with knowing she could no longer reach me. "You ever miss them?" he asked. "Sometimes I miss who I thought they were," I said, "but that version of them never really existed." He nodded. "Then you're mourning the illusion, not the people." Exactly. A week later, a letter arrived, addressed to the foundation, not me. It was from a guidance counselor in the very district where Jacob's children went to school. She wrote about 2 students who'd received unexpected scholarships from an anonymous donor and how those awards had changed their lives. I smiled, closing the letter carefully. I hadn't sent the grants directly, but I'd allowed the system to choose recipients. Somehow, fate had chosen them anyway. I didn't tell Aunt Lisa or Michael. Some blessings don't need witnesses. Months passed. The foundation grew. More staff, more programs, more lives quietly repaired. We launched new scholarships, job training centers, eviction prevention grants. Every success story stitched another patch onto the quilt of the life I'd built. One morning, I walked through the office before opening hours. Sunlight poured across the walls, covered with framed letters from those we'd helped. I stopped at one that read, "Thank you for believing in me when no one else did." My throat tightened. Michael appeared at the doorway holding 2 coffees. "You always read that one," he said. "It reminds me why we started," I replied. He handed me a cup. "You didn't start with money, Elle. You started with courage. The money just gave you room to breathe." We went to the rooftop terrace overlooking the city. The skyline shimmered, cranes and glass, catching the morning light. "Do you ever think about the day you won?" he asked. "All the time. I thought it would fix everything." "And did it?" "It fixed nothing," I said, smiling. "It just revealed what was already broken." He reached for my hand. "And now?" "Now," I said, "I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." In the distance, the church bells struck noon. I took a deep breath of warm air and felt something lift inside me, an invisible thread snapping loose. Later that evening, as the office emptied, I sat alone for a while. The city outside was alive with sound, music, laughter, traffic, rain starting somewhere far off. I opened my journal and wrote one final line. Money didn't change them. It changed me, because it gave me the freedom to choose who I wanted to be. Then I closed the book, turned off the lights, and went home to the life I'd built from silence and second chances. The house was quiet when I walked in. Michael was in the kitchen, humming softly, stirring something on the stove. He looked up and smiled. "Welcome home," he said. And for the first time in my life, I didn't need to question what that meant.